Good afternoon. Welcome to Real and Raw with Elle. Today's topic is basically is going to be about myself. You guys have asked, why don't I tell my story so you can get a better understanding of why I do what I do. I'm going to start off with the very beginning, right? So, from what I've been told, because I don't remember anything from the very beginning. I only remember things when I got to like 6 or 7. So basically, my mother, my biological mother, um, she had what, 4 kids at the time. She had 2 at the time when I came along. And she was a young mother. And we all know as young mothers how difficult it can be just trying to raise one child instead of 3. So basically, I was left with my mother's sister's in-laws at the age of 6 months. Um, now she explained it to me, she wanted to come back and get me, but she didn't want to cause any problems because, they had raised me. I think at that particular time she wanted to come back. I think I was like 6 or 7, right? And I just remember my mother who raised me said, your mother's going to come. She's going to ask you if you want to move to New York, and you just tell her no. I mean, what do I know? I'm 6 or 7, right? So I said, no, I don't want to go. Which that shouldn't have been a decision for a 6 or 7-year-old to make, but that's what happened. So I end up staying in Virginia, being raised there with my aunts, in-laws, and so my mother and my father, whom were extremely loving, caring, and dedicated to my happiness, right? I was considered the baby in the family because it was already 7 of them. So I was considered number 8. I was number 8, so I was considered the baby. And I always got what I wanted. I always cried for what I wanted, right? Which is a terrible way to be, but I mean, how would I know at such a young age? But I always cried when I wanted things or whatever. I always got my way. I just remember them being so loving and kind and wonderful, and my sisters and my brothers, whom I'm extremely close with. Some of them have since passed away, which has hurt me to my core. So growing up, I just remember as I got older, like my father died first. He died in 85. And my mother died almost 2 years to the day in 87, which that was a very hard time for me, very difficult time for me. And I think that's when my depression set in. I started going through depression because I'm like, where do I go from here? My father's gone, my mother's gone. Where do I go from here? I still have my sisters, but it's a little different when it's your mother and your father, right? And, that's all I knew. That was my mother and my father. That's all I knew. So I think around the age, I think I was about 25. So my aunt from New York, which is my mother's sister, she reached out to me and she said, it's time for you to come and be with your family here. And I'm like, ugh, that's a little scary. I don't even really know them. But I don't know. I have to think about it, right? So I remember this just like it was yesterday. So one of my sisters and I, we had kind of got into it or whatever. And I decided then, I said, you know what, maybe it's time for me to go ahead and move to New York, right? But at that particular time, what you guys don't know, I already had 2 kids by now, I had my daughter when I was 16 and I had my son when I was 22. So now I'm a single mom, moving to New York, don't know anybody, scared out of my wits, has not traveled outside of Virginia besides, being with my mother and father when we go on vacations to the different parks or what have you. But other than that, no. So I remember getting on the bus, going to New York, scared to death. And I think at that time, I think my cousin was with me because she always came down during the summertime, which was my aunt's daughter. So so it was me, my two kids, and her on the bus going to New York. I remember arriving at Port Authority, seeing people on the street, which I wasn't used to. That was very scary. And I'm like, okay, how do we get to where your mother lives, right? So we end up catching a bus or whatever. So moved to New York. I actually moved in with one of my sisters, whom only had a 1-bedroom apartment, right? I'm like, I don't know where we're gonna sleep, but okay. So she had a couch that was like a let-out bed. So me and my two kids on the couch, her and her son was in the bedroom. And I think I got a job pretty quickly. And she actually gave me a car. She gave me a car. It wasn't the greatest looking car, but hey, it got me from point A to point B. So hey, I was happy about that. So after being there, probably for about maybe a month, or maybe even a little less, I had already started working and everything. And my best friend from Virginia, her father passed. And when her father passed, you know, in my mind, I'm thinking I have to go there to support her. I mean, that's like my best friend, right? She's like my ride or die. We've been together for a long time. And you know, their family was like my family, you know. So I asked my sister, I said, do you mind if I not pay you rent this time, but go to Virginia and go to the funeral? She agreed. I was thinking, you know, this is going to be very difficult for me to try to raise two children here in New York, you know, try to, you know, get a better job than what I had, and take care of two kids by myself, right? And so my son was only, I think, maybe 2 at the time. And so I had spoke to his father. He was like, oh, just bring him here. You know, I'll take care of him for a year. You can come back and get him, blah, 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 blah. Once you get on your feet. Great. Perfect scenario, right? Okay, so I go to Virginia, go to the funeral, drop my son off, headed back to New York. My sister was upset because she felt like I made the wrong choice by going to Virginia and not paying her rent, right? But clearly I asked her. She said it was okay, but I guess she thought about it. So now at this point, it's me and my daughter, and I'm like, I'm feeling really uncomfortable here. I don't think she want me to be here. So I don't remember totally, but I think she put me out, right? It's kind of foggy, but I remember I had to leave, right? So I called my aunt. I'm like, hey, I don't have anywhere to live. Me and my daughter, we don't have anywhere to live. I don't even know what I'm going to do. I don't even know anybody else up here, right? So she said, pack your stuff, come on over here. You got somewhere to live. You're not going to be out on the street. I was like, oh, thank you, Jesus. So I go over to my aunt's house, and she got a full basement. So me and my daughter, we crashed there at her basement. And so now at this point, you know, I got a stable home. Somebody's always here. I can work a couple of jobs now because my daughter's going to be taken care of, right? So that's what I do. I get 2 jobs, working 2 jobs. It's like, oh, I just got to get this money. I got to get this money because I got to get my own apartment. You know, I already got this car. The car is doing fine. By the grace of God, my sister didn't take the car back. So I worked 2 jobs. After starting my second job, about, I don't know, maybe a month into me starting my second job, I start having these real bad stomach pains, right? And I'm like, what is wrong? What is happening? I mean, I'm taking Tylenols every like 2-3 hours just trying to combat the pain. And so I end up going to the hospital, right? End up going to the hospital, and the doctor was like, well, you're pregnant. What? What is happening? What do you mean? But you're pregnant in your tube, so you're not going to be carrying a baby or whatever, right? So all I just remember just crying, just boo-hooing. And I remember the nurse said to me, well, what's wrong? Why are you crying so bad? And I was like, I can't have another job. No. You know, and she's like, well, unfortunately, you're not going to have this one anyway. So, all right. So I made it through that, went back to my aunt's house. You know, I got to go back to work, right? No, I got to go back to work. So I think they told me I needed to be out like 6 weeks. I don't think I waited 6 weeks. I think it was like 2 weeks later, I went back to my job. I'm like, I can't like lose my job. I got to keep my job, right? So I go back to my job in pain, like working, like bent over in pain, but still going to work. I'm like, I got to go to work. I have to get my money because I have to get my apartment. I have to get my child back, right? That's all I was thinking. That's all I was focused on. 6 months later, I was able to get my own apartment. I was really happy about that. And I remember like my mother's friends telling me, "Oh, it's people that's been living here their whole life has not done what you've done in 6 months." But you know, I was determined not to be a burden on anybody. I was determined to do my own thing. I was determined to take care of my children by myself. I didn't want to ask anybody for nothing. I didn't want to feel like nobody owed me anything because nobody owed me anything, right? So at this time, I'm slowly trying to build a relationship with my mother, right? So then I started dating this guy. Oh boy. Talking about a monster, right?